Okay, so hello everyone. I'd like to sort of officially kick things off. We are very excited to welcome you today, and thank you all for taking the time out of your very busy day. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you'll find it useful and informative. My name is Emma Riley McKay. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Strategic Communications Specialist at YWCA Hamilton, and I am a member of the YWCA Ontario Coalition. So before we get going, I would like to pass it over to my colleague Roz for a land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Emma. Hi, everyone. I'm Roz Gunn. I'm the Director of Communications and Advocacy at YWCA Cambridge and a member of the YWCA Ontario Coalition. So before we begin this meeting, I would like to acknowledge that we are all working on traditional Indigenous territory, some of which was never ceded. For myself, I'm currently working from the Haldimand Tract, land promised to the Haudenosaunee people of 6 nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. This territory is the traditional unceded territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples. Those of us who are settlers have a responsibility as beneficiaries of this land to acknowledge and understand its history and the current experiences of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, particularly the persistent violence and discrimination they continue to face across Turtle Island at the hands of all levels of government, of media, of communities, of institutions, and of individuals who have yet to unlearn their prejudices. We must use this understanding to inform our work, to ensure we do not perpetuate the harms of colonization, and to begin to repair them. This also means, as a coalition of organizations with fairly long histories, YWCA Ontario must actively commit to continuously investigating its policies, practices, and its own history to come to terms with and acknowledge the harms it's participated in or perhaps propagated, and to truly, intentionally, and genuinely do the work of reconciliation.
Thank you, Roz. So before we kick it off, just a few housekeeping items. Just a reminder that today's event is nonpartisan and we will not be discussing or promoting any individual parties. We have a Q&A function. If you have a question that Sammy from YWCA Toronto will be monitoring. So if you have a question, pop it in the Q&A and we will make sure it's answered. And obviously, once again, just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made available widely in the coming days. So without further ado, I am very, very happy to introduce Alana from Elections Ontario, who is joining us today and will provide us with some information about the ins and outs of voting in next Thursday's elections. So thank you, Alana, and take it away.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sammy, Roz, and Emma. My name is Elena Béchon, as you just heard. Thank you for that kind introduction. I use she, her pronouns, and I will be sharing a PowerPoint presentation up on my screen. While I pull that up, I'll just let you know that I am the Public Engagement Network Officer here with Elections Ontario. Are you all able to see my screen? It should say Elections Ontario, nice and big. Okay. And so yes, today I'll be walking us through a bit of a presentation, as you heard, about Elections Ontario, and particularly about the upcoming provincial election here in our province. So first things first, thank you for joining me. As we said, the general election is on June 2nd, next Thursday. It's truly right around the corner. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will be answering any questions at the end of this presentation. You're welcome to drop them in the chat as well. As you heard, I'll be happy to get to those and leave some time at the end in order to address them. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today. We'll first give you a quick overview of Elections Ontario. Then we'll let you know about what electors should know about the voting process, just some easy takeaways. We'll talk about the days and ways to vote, the tools and services Elections Ontario offers to make voting easy, and then what's new this election, as well as some job opportunities for you or those that you know who might be interested with Elections Ontario. And then finally, as I said, we'll have some time for some questions from all of you. So, an overview of Elections Ontario. A little bit about us. We are a nonpartisan office of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. We administer provincial elections in Ontario, as well as by-elections. We're committed to making voting easy and accessible for all electors, maintaining the integrity and security and transparency of the electoral process. And we're also dedicated to continuing to improve Ontario's electoral process. I would also like to introduce you to the concept of the local returning office. This is a A local returning office, the election headquarters in your community. You know a little bit about Elections Ontario. This is the local faction within your area. They work from a local returning office within your electoral district, and they're run by a returning officer within that electoral district, as well as a team of field staff to get that election off the ground within your area. They offer a lot of services at local returning offices. These services include advanced voting, special ballot voting, employment opportunities, voter registration, assistive voting and assistive voting technology. So what is an election? Excuse me, what is an election? An election allows you to play an active role in shaping democracy. Canadian citizens can cast a ballot to choose their federal government, their provincial governments, and their municipal governments. Let's talk about specifically in a provincial election, you're voting for your provincial government, specifically an MPP to be your representative or member of provincial parliament. Some topics that are some areas that the provincial government holds power over are the provincial taxes, hospitals, education, marriage, provincial correctional facilities in Ontario, property and civil rights, rules of the road, and the age of majority. These are some topics to keep in mind when you're casting your ballot in the upcoming election. Voting gives Ontarians the power to express their opinion, participate in our democratic process, and choose a person to represent them. As I said, your MPP. So who can vote? To vote in a provincial election in Ontario, you must be at least 18 years of age by election day, a Canadian citizen, and a resident of Ontario. What electors should know. Voting is private. Every person who is eligible to vote gets only one vote, and voting is a right guaranteed by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Let's talk a little bit about registering to vote. Registering to vote or updating your information can be done online, as well as at your local returning office, or you can go to register to vote when you go vote, whether that be at a returning office, at an advance poll, or on election day at your designated voting location. To check your information on e-registration, that's available anytime. I'll get into that on my next slide. But to actually update that information and have it be added to the voters list, you would have had to access that e-registration tool before May 23rd. So yes, a couple days ago or earlier. But don't fear, there's still many options for you to update your information and make sure that you're on the voters list to vote. So we'll talk a little bit about that e-registration tool and sort of what functions it has for you now that we're past that May 23rd deadline. So to check if you're registered to vote, maybe you're not even sure, you can use our e-registration tool. It makes it easier for electors to register to vote and check that you're registered to vote before you actually go to cast your ballot. You can find out the information on Elections Ontario website, which is elections.on.ca. You can update or add to that information through e-registration. And you can keep in mind that, again, the last day to actually update it, so it will be available at the poll when you go vote, was May 23rd. But in the meantime, you can still double check that that's all correct. So again, maybe you're not sure if you're registered to vote. That's what this tool is great for now. Maybe you've changed your name or you've moved since the last provincial election, or you haven't registered to vote before. You can double check online to see if your name is already added to the voters list. You're able to register in person at your returning office at any time, or at an advanced poll, or on election day when you go to vote. You will just need to bring an accepted piece of identification. To check for a full list of acceptable pieces of ID, please go to our website, elections.on.ca/ID requirements, in order to see that full list. Many people use their driver's license, but there are a variety of different types of ID that one can utilize to go to vote. So how do people vote? What does that process look like? Once an election is called, if you're on the voters list, Ontarians will be mailed a voter information card, or a VIC card, telling them when and where to vote. I have one of those up on your screen now. You can see all that information on there. Some of you may have already received some of these in the mail. what voting on election day looks like. You'll go to your identified voting location, follow the signs, they'll be on the ground or posted to show you where to go. You'll show your ID from that list that's on our website, and you'll ultimately vote. Casting your ballot. Oh, sorry. We'll first talk about what ID you'd need to bring and show. So you'll either bring your VIC card if that's what you received, and a piece of government ID that identifies who you are. Those two together prove both your address and your identity. Or if you don't have a voter information card, or say you weren't registered before that May 23rd deadline online, you can bring one piece of ID that shows your name and your address. Again, a lot of people choose to use their driver's license, but there is a full list of ID available on our website. I, for one, don't have a driver's license, so I definitely have to utilize that list in order to make sure that I have something that, again, proves who I am and where it is that I reside. So now we'll talk about marking your ballot. I said that, after you show your ID and you go through all of those signs and posters that show you your way, you're then going to vote. What does that actual voting process look like? What does marking your ballot look like? So an election official gives each voter a ballot, which lists the candidates running in their electoral district. And the voter goes behind a privacy screen. You can see an image of that on your screen if you can. And the voter marks an X in the circle beside the name of the candidate for whom they wish to vote. E-poll books and tabulators. So in most polling locations, we use two pieces of technology to make voting and counting results easier and faster in Ontario elections. When you arrive, we will check that you are on the voters list on an e-poll book, rather like a computer. Once you hand your ballot, or again, we can update your information on that list if you arrive having not registered. Once we hand you a ballot with your ballot, your name will be crossed off the voters list on the e-poll book to show that you have voted. As I said, each voter gets only one vote. When you have voted, you will bring your ballot to an election official. They will feed your ballot into the tabulator face down to maintain the secrecy of your vote. Please note, some polling locations do not use technology. In that case, your name is crossed off a paper voters list and your ballot is placed in a ballot box. Now let's discuss some of the many days and ways to vote. So there are many. Each comes with its own information, so I will take you through each briefly. You can vote by special ballot. Voting by special ballot includes voting by mail at a returning office, requesting a home visit, or voting at a designated hospital in our hospital program. Any voter may request a home visit through the returning office in their electoral district if they are unable to read or write, are unable to complete an application form, or are someone who requires assistance. If you or a family member is in a hospital, they may have participated in the May 16th, 17th, and 18th hospital program. In order to check if where that program was applicable, you were able to contact your returning office. If you've missed those dates, there is still time to apply to vote for mail, which we'll get into in a slide in just a moment. You can vote early by mail, as I said. Once an election has been called, which it has, you can apply to vote by mail. You can apply to vote by mail online at votebymail.elections.on.ca, or you can download and print the application form, or you can call us or visit your returning office for a printed application form. Just remember that the earlier you apply, the more you increase your ability to get your voting kit and be able to return your ballot to us by 6 p.m. on June 2nd. Once an Elections Ontario official approves your application to vote by mail, you'll be mailed a voting kit. Please note that once you've applied to vote by mail, you're unable to vote in another way. So you must send us back your ballot by mail in order for us to count that. You're not able to show up to a returning office or on election day to an election location, to a voting location. You've opted to vote by mail. Once you've completed your ballot, it can be mailed back to us in the prepaid envelope that's supplied with your voting kit, or you can drop it off at your local returning office. Either way, it must be received by Elections Ontario by 6 p.m. on June 2nd in order to be counted. Excellent. You can also vote early at your returning office. You can vote in person once the election is called until 6 p.m. on June 2nd. So that's the day before on June 1st, excuse me. So the day before the June 2nd election. To find your returning office, you can go to you can look on your voter information card or utilize our voter information services at electionsontario.ca. You can also vote early at an advance poll. In person from May 19th to May 28th. So we still have 2 days of those, including the Saturday, in case that's easiest for anybody. You can vote at any advanced voting location in your electoral district. So it's not just one. For a full list of voting locations and dates, as well as the times that these polls are open for, you'll utilize that voter information service that's on our website. That's the easiest way to get that information. And of course, you can vote in person on election day at your assigned voting location from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on June 2nd. To find your assigned voting location, it will be printed on your voter information card. You can use our voter information services, or you can use the Elections Ontario app, which I will be discussing in just a little bit. Excellent. So what's new at Elections Ontario? The aforementioned Elections Ontario app. It's available for download on Google Play and at the Apple Store. You can download the app and create an account to access a full list of candidates in your electoral district, a full list of voting locations and dates, a scannable version of your voter information card, which is so helpful. After all, I might leave home without my voter information card, but I'm a little less likely to leave home without my cell phone, as well as customizable election notifications. As we get closer to the election, those could become quite useful. The app has been designed to comply with Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act and to be compatible with assistive technologies. Let's discuss some of the tools and services to reduce barriers for persons with disabilities. Oh, sorry, for persons who may be facing barriers to voting. Excuse me, that slide was incorrect. We will discuss specifically for folks who are facing barriers for disabilities as well. So first, removing barriers for Ontarians is experiencing homelessness. Let's talk a little bit about the Certificate of Identity and Residence. This program has already been carried out for this election, but I'd like to give everybody a heads up about its existence, something to keep in mind for by-elections and elections that are to come. Also, in case you engage with anybody who might have a Certificate of Identity and Residence or have questions about it, you can know a little bit and direct them back to Elections Ontario if they have any questions. So a Certificate of Identity and Residence, or a form called EO-824, serves as proof of identity and residence for individuals who are without a permanent address and who wish to vote. It allows a shelter, food bank, or community health center to serve as a voter's residence. The Certificate of Identity and Residence and how it works. It's completed in pen by an authorized signatory and a voter experiencing homelessness or who is without a fixed address. The elector then brings the form to a voting location. It can be used to vote at a local returning office, an advanced poll, or at their designated voting location. The polling station confirms the form signed by the authorized signatory, and the elector votes. For that, I would like to clarify the location that will your voting location will be based on the address of the service that has provided this form. So that shelter, food bank, or health center. For more information, people can visit the Voter Information Services section of Elections Ontario. Now, I mentioned that authorized signatory. So that has to be a process by which shelter, food bank, and community health care facility receive the authorization for administrators form, either in hard copy or by email from Elections Ontario. The administrator authorizes representatives by submitting the authorization for administrators form no later than May 19th. As I said, this program has already started to take place. The ball is rolling, and an organization can return the completed form by email or mail to Elections Ontario. The authorized representatives who have been added to that form, sometimes they're administrators, front desk workers, intake workers, whoever it might be from your organization, are able to then issue those certificates of identity and residence to those who utilize their services. These signatories must be eligible voters, meaning they're at least 18 years of age, a Canadian citizen, and a resident of Ontario. For those who face linguistic barriers to voting, we offer, oh my goodness gracious, I just went way too far ahead. Excuse me, everybody. Sorry, just one moment while I get us back. There we go. For those who face linguistic barriers to voting, marking your ballot, we offer a document called the Marking Your Ballot Guide at all of our polling locations and polling stations. It's available in 38 languages. It walks somebody through the process of marking their ballot in a language that's more comfortable to them. There are also helpful resources on the Elections Ontario website about how to mark your ballot and accepted ID you must provide to vote. We offer those in, again, 38 languages, including 4 Indigenous languages, which are Cree, Mohawk, Ojibwe, and Ojibwe. Removing barriers for persons with disabilities. As I mentioned, we'd get to. Elections Ontario provides accessible services for voters at all voting locations and assistive voting technology in all returning offices. Voters can also vote by mail or request a home visit. Elections Ontario works to ensure voting locations meet our site accessibility standards where possible. An asterisk next to somebody's voting location on their voter information card or on our website lets you know that there's an accessibility barrier at that location for somebody to look into and see if they need assistance. More information is available on our website specific to an individual's voting location. Accessible voting tools and services that are available at voting locations. So the accessible voting tools that are available at voting locations include curbside voting, where the ballot is brought outside the voting location by an election official. In order to utilize the service, please call your returning officer to request it. We provide magnifiers and ballot templates in Braille with numberings and cutouts upon request for those who need to utilize them. We accommodate support persons for voters, for voter assistance with communication, mobility, personal care, or medical needs, and/or accessing goods, services, or facilities. We also accommodate guide dogs or service animals that are under the voter's consistent care and control. And we allow voters to use their mobile phones and/or devices, but as an accessibility tool only while voting, in case that's needed. As far as interpreters and interveners, American Sign Language interpreters and Langue de Signes Québécois interpreters and interveners can be booked by the voter and billed directly to Elections Ontario. An ALS or an LSQ interpreter is booked and billed through the Canadian Hearing Services, the CHS in Northern Ontario, CNIB Community Services in Western and Eastern Ontario, and the Greater Toronto Area. If you'd like some of the contact information for these services or any other information, visit the accessibility page of elections.on.ca. Details, including the service provider for your area and information like that, is all on our website. Again, Elections Ontario will cover the costs of those bookings. Accessible tools and services at returning offices. Excellent. You can use assistive voting technology, or AVT, to vote at each returning office from May 21st to June 2nd. If you would like to use AVT on Election Day, we recommend that you book an appointment ahead of time. Walk-ins will be accommodated if possible, where possible. So what is AVT, assistive voting technology? Some types of assistive voting technology that exist, that we offer, are as follows. Assistive voting technology are tools that let voters cast their ballots secretly and independently. Voters can choose one of 3 controller types: the audio tactile interface. So the voter controller has audio directions and features large raised buttons, bright colors, and Braille inscriptions. The paddles can be pressed using hands, feet, or elbows in order to vote. Our sip and puff technology, this device allows voters to mark their ballot by sipping, inhaling, or puffing, exhaling into a straw. Excuse me. The chat's just moved over. So you can also vote by home visit, as I've mentioned. That's a way you can call your returning office to request a home visit if you are unable to go to your returning office because of a disability, are unable to read or write, are unable to complete an application form, or someone who requires assistance. You can also contact your returning office to transfer to a more accessible voting location if need be to better meet your accessibility needs. You can also vote at a retirement home or long-term care home. That's included in our long-term care, that's facilitated by our mobile voting services at a long-term care facility. To check out more information about that, go to electionsontario.ca and check out the Ways to Vote dropdown. So I'll discuss briefly some of the accessibility training we have here at Elections Ontario. Election officials are trained in accessible customer service based on feedback from past elections to show respect for persons with disabilities by allowing them to make their own choices in accessing tools and services required to successfully navigate through the voting process. Our accessibility committees. We have two accessibility committees here at Elections Ontario. One is our internal accessibility advisory committee, established with members representing every division of Elections Ontario to ensure EO staff consider accessibility in every aspect of our service delivery, including products, policies, processes, and protocols. And then we also have our multi-year accessibility plan, or our MyApp committee, which includes Elections Ontario staff, persons with disabilities, and agencies that represent them, as well make up the MyApp committee. Elections Ontario hosts regular meetings to discuss accessible voting and other accessibility related issues with members who share their experiences and expertise with us. So some of the organizations that are included in the MyApp committee are listed on your screen. We have the Alzheimer's Society of Toronto, the Arthritis Society, CNIB, Community Living Ontario, Spinal Cord Injury Ontario, as well as many others. Now I'd like to discuss some of the job opportunities to come work with us this election. Maybe you or someone you know might want to take advantage of some of these opportunities. So maybe perhaps somebody's interested in working this election. It's a challenging and exciting environment for sure. Hiring has already started. We are accepting applications until May 31st. All positions are paid and training is provided. One does not need to submit a resume in order to apply. So it's very, very low barrier to entrance in order to get in that application. And available positions are already posted on our website. Just go to jobs.elections.on.ca to check those out. There's also something you can click on the main screen of our website at just electionsontario.ca. Some of the resources that are available on our website are on your screen here, just showing you what that'll look like if you choose to log on. We have working the upcoming election, we have voter registration, and then we have our voter information services. Voter information services, I've mentioned a few times, it's just where you can put in your postal code and see where it is you can vote, the hours of your returning office, and contact information for things like your returning office. Now, it wouldn't be a year it wouldn't be this year if I wasn't talking about COVID-19. Of course, your health and safety and the health and safety of our staff are of utmost importance to us at Elections Ontario. For over 2 years, we've been working with the Office of the Chief Medical Officer of Health to put the processes and equipment in place that will keep everyone safe during the election. As you know, when it comes to COVID-19, the requirements for things like indoor gatherings are changing regularly. The processes and equipment we see at your advance poll or on election day will be based on the best information we have at the time, and it might not be the same from place to place, as public health units or municipalities in Ontario might have different health measures for their region. So be prepared to physically distance, to use hand sanitizer, and note that election officials are likely to be behind plexiglass barriers. Wonderful. We're hoping that we've gotten you vote ready. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can always visit electionsontario.ca for more information. Obviously, I've brought up the website a lot, but it is a font of information for either you or to connect other folks to as you navigate the election process. Thank you. If you have any questions or you get questions from other folks, there are some great contact or information services at Elections Ontario. People can reach out from the public, can reach out to info@elections.on.ca by email, or they can contact our 1-800 number in order to be connected with information directly. Finally, if you have any questions about this particular presentation, you can reach out to me and the outreach team at outreach@elections.on.ca. Now I'm happy to take any questions from all of you that maybe I can help clarify some things, or maybe they're particular to you. By all means, let me know. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Alana. And I'm going to throw it over now to Sammy. There's some questions in the Q&A, and she can help you moderate those.
Perfect. Thanks, Emma. And thank you again for your presentation as well, Alana. So we have 2 questions in the chat so far. And just a reminder to everyone, if you'd like to ask a question, to feel free to drop it in that Q&A function, which you should see on the bottom panel there. So the first question is, I voted by mail last week. Can I find out whether my mailed-in ballot has been received/counted?
I'll unmute myself there, excuse me. So as far as I'm aware, I do not believe that we have what's the word I'm looking for? Mail tracking, as this is mailed through Canada Post. So I do not believe so. If it was mailed last week, I feel very confident that you got that in plenty of time to get back to us. If you have any particular questions, I might recommend that you contact your returning office to double check if they can offer any further information. We won't be able to inform you if we've necessarily counted it. After all, ballots are all counted on election day at the same time, and we do not distinguish how those ballots came to us through the special ballots program. So the particulars of your ballot remain secret and private, obviously for your privacy and security. But ultimately, in order to double check whether or not it's come in, you can try calling your returning office to see if maybe they have further information. I do know that we do not offer package tracking, unfortunately.
Thanks, Alana. Next we have, is curbside or outdoor voting available to anyone who isn't comfortable entering a polling station where people may be unmasked?
I would, again, I'm sorry that this is going to come up a lot, but I would connect with your returning office in order to book it. It shouldn't be a problem. The point of this is to be inclusive and to make sure that everybody feels comfortable accessing services. We understand that disabilities aren't always something that we can see, aren't always something that you can identify on a person by looking at them. And ultimately, people's ability to feel comfortable in a space may be dictated by a variety of concerns that I personally cannot dictate to another person. So see if you can book that. Should be not a problem.
Perfect. I'm just double checking here to see if we have any other questions.
Not a problem. I would also like to clarify that obviously steps will be taken to make that space as comfortable as possible for everybody and as safe as possible, not only for everybody who is voting, but obviously for everybody who has to work that whole day. We will be sanitizing surfaces in between uses. We will have hand sanitizer available. We'll be encouraging people to socially distance, things like that, just so people can feel safe and secure while they go vote. So hopefully for whoever asked that question, you can feel comfortable participating in that way. If not, again, you can also vote at things like advance polls. We do still have 2 days of that available. They tend to be just a little bit quieter than election day, especially because you might have more availability to go throughout the day to your advance poll, unlike election day, where a lot of us end up going after work at the same time. So that's something to consider. Or at your returning office. There isn't a deadline for returning offices except that June 1st, right? So you do have time, even after advance polls, to go to your returning office. If you'd like somewhere that's potentially just a little bit quieter, that you have a little bit more control over the circumstances that you're in, those are great options available to everybody. And you don't have to coordinate those in advance in the same way that you do curbside voting.
Perfect. Another question that we have is, what are some other ways to get involved if you're not someone who's eligible to vote?
Awesome. I love hearing this question. I love the idea of everybody wanting to get involved. So for the folks who are ineligible to vote currently, we do have one paid position with Elections Ontario. It's the information assistant role, somebody who just has to be over 16 years of age and have a social insurance number. So that can be true for things like permanent residents, what have you, people who may not have citizenship currently. That's a great way. Another one is obviously being able to volunteer or donate to a political party that matters to you or a social service that matters to you at this time. That's a wonderful way to get involved. And then ultimately also having conversations with friends and family, being able to keep up political discourse, being able to be civically engaged is not just in being able to vote. It's about, we think of it as sort of a spectrum of involvement. And it's great to get people engaged, to have your voice heard, to have people consider you when they go vote. After all, being able to have a voice for those that are important to you is a big reason why a lot of people choose to cast their ballot. As well as, again, being able to keep people politically minded and engaged. I think that that's an excellent way to be involved as well.
Thanks, Alana. I'm not seeing any other questions at this time, so I'll pass it off to Roz, but if any come up, I'll be sure to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sammy. And thank you so much, Alana, for that very informative session. Just a reminder to folks here, we are YWCA Ontario, which is a provincial coalition of YWCA member associations. We offer a range of housing programs and services, including violence against women shelters, employment and training programs, community supports, childcare services, and youth programs, all designed to address the needs of women, girls, and gender diverse people and their families. We also engage in systemic advocacy to advance substantive gender and racial equity in our province. We are hosting a provincial election campaign. So this speaks to how you can engage even if you aren't eligible to vote. I'm losing my spot, but our campaign is to both engage and educate the public about the importance of choosing gender equity this election. We're calling on all candidates running in the provincial election to endorse our 5-point feminist plan. That includes calls for increasing social assistance rates to at least $2,000 per month, investing in a continuum of housing options for women and gender diverse people, including safe, affordable housing, emergency shelters, transitional and supportive programs, and enhancing the federal childcare agreement to include decent work and pay provisions for all childcare workers, implementing decent work conditions for women that include gender inclusive, upskilling, and other employment programs, and finally, creating and implementing a coordinated province-wide strategy to eliminate gender-based violence. And thanks for those links, Sammy.
Yes, thanks, Sammy. And once again, our campaign is called Choose Gender Equity. Follow our hashtag on social media, and check out our website at ChooseGenderEquity.ca. We have our 5-point feminist plan. Sammy has been sharing the links in the chat, and if you go to our website and sign the petition, it will send an email to all of your local candidates, encouraging them to choose gender equity in this election. We are just over 250 signatures on our petition, and we would love your help in reaching our goal of 300 signatures. It just takes a minute, and we would love your support. So please click on the link and add your name. And from there, please share widely with friends, family, colleagues, anyone who you think should be interested in gender equity, which should be everyone. We also have a policy brief on our website that includes more information about all of our campaign points. So Sammy has shared that link in the chat as well. Thank you, Sammy. And just in case you weren't paying attention, don't forget the election is next week, June 2nd. If you haven't already, please make a plan to vote. And don't forget, advanced polls are open until Saturday on June 2nd. Sorry, Sarah.
The chat, I guess not, folks aren't seeing the chat. We're going to send a follow-up email then with all of those links we just told you we sent you. We'll put the links in our follow-up email after the session. And then Emma, I think you mentioned a recording. Well, yes, thank you, Sarah, for letting us know. Emma, I think you mentioned the recording of this will be made live eventually on, well, at least YWCA Cambridge's YouTube channel, but maybe it'll be all over YouTube. And we're ending early, I think. I think that's all she wrote, folks. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. You're welcome to get in touch with us or follow us on the links that you didn't see, but the links that you're going to see in your email later today. And thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you so much, Alana.